Cost aside, when it comes to the world of Mark 1 and Mark 2 Escorts, one engine seems to be far superior than all the others. Now, years ago, I would have said that my unobtainable dream engine would be, you're looking at well over £30,000. They need a rebuild after every 1,000 miles. So it is, a definite bona fide alternative. As modified car enthusiasts, we all have our own opinions and preferences when it comes to engines. And when we're deciding which power plant we're going to use for our builds, the decision usually boils down to how much power we can make versus the cost of any engine. But cost aside, when it comes to the world of Mark 1 and Mark 2 Escorts, in particular in rallying, when we're talking about 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engines, one engine seems to be far superior than all the others. I am of course talking about the Millington Diamond series engines. Now, if you're a regular viewer of my content, please click the like button now because it's a massive help to me and my channel. Alternatively, if you're new to the channel, click subscribe now and welcome. I'm Marcus Hayes and today we're going to talk about engines. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I am certainly no expert when it comes to engines. I'm no expert when it comes to cars. I'm just a bit of an idiot with a big obsession for classic Fords and Mark 1 and Mark 2 Ford Escorts in particular. And let's face it, my old school Escorts just get fitted with used ST170 engines from the Mark 1 Focus, which are a great engine for what they are, and they fit into my very small budget, but there are far superior options out there. Of course, if there is any companies out there that want to sponsor me with an engine for my old school Ford Escorts, drop me an email. My email address is in the description. But yeah, all jokes aside, it seems like most engines do get expensive, a little bit unreliable, and a little bit undrivable on the road once you get too far north of 200 horsepower. Now, certain engines, like your more modern engines like your Z-Techs and stuff, are maybe a bit easier to get to that 200 horsepower mark than, say, an old Pinto engine. But once you get much above 200 horsepower with a naturally aspirated engine, you're essentially just making the engine rev higher to make that extra power, and then you need to then make the engine able to withstand those higher revs to make that power possible. And as far as I know, with my very limited knowledge, especially with the older engines like Pintos and stuff, the torque doesn't really go much above a certain number, maybe 170 or 180 foot-pounds. So even though you can keep increasing the revs to make a Pinto make 250 horsepower, the torque might still be the same peak as, say, 190 or a 200 horsepower Pinto engine. Again, I must stress, I'm not an expert, and feel free to correct anything I say in this video or any other video in the comments. But the way I see it, by increasing the revs to produce more horsepower, it's not really making more power. Horsepower is a man-made figure which is calculated by torque and revs, whereas torque is the actual power figure. But I'm not an expert, and I'm sure there's a ton of engines out there that I know absolutely nothing about. But as a general rule, I see 200 horsepower as the limit for a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder 2-litre-ish engine before things get ridiculously expensive and complicated. Now, years ago, I would have said that my unobtainable dream engine would be a Cosworth YB engine, as found in Sierra and Escort Cosworths, with 200 horsepower in stock form and up to 1,000 horsepower if your wallet is big enough. And with them being an actual Ford engine, yeah, I just saw a Cosy lump as the ultimate dream engine. And you can make them into a naturally aspirated engine and make 250 horsepower easily, whereas, as I say, your Pintos and stuff like that make 250 horsepower not so easily. And the great thing about a Cosy lump is, because they're based on a Pinto, they slot straight into a Mark 1 or a Mark 2 Escort. And because they're a Ford engine, there's not so much hate, you could say, like you would get if you were to fit a non-Ford engine to a Ford car, which I don't personally have a problem with. You know, I don't necessarily have to have a Ford engine in my Fords, although I currently do. Now, in more recent times, I would say that my dream unobtainable engine would be the Millington Diamond series engine. I mentioned in a recent video that I have experienced one of these engines from the passenger seat when legendary rally driver Frank Kelly took me for a spin on some closed off country roads in Northern Ireland. Ultimately, the best passenger ride I've ever had in any car, and it probably won't ever be matched or beaten, if I'm honest. And yeah, the way that car pulls you along, considering it's just a 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine, was immense. It was just undescribable, like nothing I've ever experienced and maybe ever will again. And in terms of the figures, you know, that Millington engine, I think it was a 2.5 litre. They do various sizes, but you know, for a 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine to make 360 horsepower, which is how much a decently modified Cosworth turbo engine would produce. Yeah, it's just mind-blowing that a 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine can make 360 horsepower, in my eyes. And when I consider that, as far as I'm concerned, most 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engines will struggle to make any more than 200 or 250 horsepower unless you've got really big pockets, then yeah, for a 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine to make 360 horsepower, yeah, to me that's just really, really impressive. Now, it's worth noting that a Millington engine is a ridiculously expensive engine. I think the base price for an engine without any of the sort of exterior ancillaries is £22,000 plus VAT. So for a full turnkey Millington setup, if you're starting from scratch, you're looking at well over £30,000. So they're not a cheap engine. And I've heard that they need a rebuild after every 1,000 miles. Now, for a big budget race or rally team, then, you know, maybe that's not an issue. And rebuilding it after every 1,000 rally stage miles, maybe that isn't an issue. Maybe that's just rebuilding the engine once a season. So maybe that's just a normal thing that you would do as a high budget rally team, right? But in the normal world, rebuilding your engine after every 1,000 miles is a bit extreme. You know, most of us don't even do oil changes that often, let alone having the whole engine rebuilt. And I'd hate to think how much that rebuild would cost, but I've certainly heard a rumour that it's around £10,000. So when you consider that in rebuild cost alone, if that £10,000 figure is true, you're looking at £10 per mile. Yeah, it's a very expensive power plant to choose. But as I say, with that kind of performance, it just seems like nothing else is going to be able to touch it. But I recently came across a post on Facebook, which was actually a for sale post for an engine that seems on paper to match a Millington engine. So I thought it'd be something interesting to study about a little bit and to share with you guys about. The engine in question is in fact a modified Cosworth YB engine in naturally aspirated form that has been built by KGP Motorsport. And it's funny because I've heard that in the early days, Millington themselves used to produce engines that were modified, naturally aspirated Cosy YB lumps. But nowadays, their engines are purpose-built, bespoke engines. You know, everything is built from scratch. And as I've mentioned already in this video, back in the day, my sort of dream engine was a Cosy engine, but nowadays I kind of see my dream unobtainable engine as a Millington engine. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that I've come across these KGP Motorsport Cosy YBs that are, it seems, quite matched in terms of performance to the Millington engine. Now, KGP Motorsport happened to be based in Donegal in Ireland, which you could argue is like the home of rallying in Ireland. The Donegal Rally in Ireland, which is an event I haven't attended, is probably the most talked about car event in Ireland, you could say. It's the one event that everyone talks about to me whenever I go over to Ireland or Northern Ireland. And I did actually go to that area at a different time of the year to attend a run that was organised by the Irish Escort Owners Club. And yeah, that was an awesome event in itself. But yeah, KGP Motorsport, they do engine building and tuning. They've got a rolling road there and stuff. But they don't only deal with the Cosy YB engines. In fact, they build Vauxhall XE engines, 1.4, 1.6, 2.1 and 2.5s. They deal with the Toyota 4AGE engines, Honda B16s as well in front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive. But as I say, it's the 2.5 naturally aspirated Cosy YBs that I want to hone in on in this video, because it seems that they are actually a match to the 2.5 litre version of the Millington engines. So the KGP naturally aspirated Cosy engines are actually built from the brand new alloy custom motorsport cylinder head and block castings that are available. And one thing that I noticed that was kind of cool is that the alloy block that they use still has 205 cast into it. So I'm guessing, and I might be wrong, that rather than these blocks being like a billet machined block, they're actually sort of based on the iron blocks, right? You know, maybe a mould has been taken from an iron block and then they mould these new alloy blocks. I'm not sure. Do let me know in the comments if you know. But yeah, these KGP Motorsport Cosy lumps are available in 2.5, 2.6, 2.7 or 3 litre versions. But I think that most rally cars use the 2.5 versions to allow them to fit into certain rally classes and stuff. And the 2.5 versions of the KGP NA Cosy lumps produce 360 bhp and 252 foot-pounds of torque. So, you know, roughly what the 2.5 litre version of the Millington engine would produce. In terms of spec, for you guys that are more technically minded than I am, they use slipper race pistons, steel conrods, a steel crankshaft with an 88mm stroke. They use a lightweight flywheel to suit the 7¼ inch clutch. They use a dry sump system, and because they're obviously injection engines, they use a trigger pulley and a crank position sensor. They're fitted with KGP's own CNC race cylinder head, and those heads are obviously built with new valve seats and bronze guides to suit, KGP inlet and exhaust valves and spring retainers, solid lifters and lightweight buckets. They also have KGP double valve springs and steel retainers, KGP billet camshafts and vernier pulleys, and they run taper throttle bodies with a billet intake manifold. They use a DTA S60 ECU, which I think is the same as what Millington sell for theirs. DTA T4, the Millington Jews. So yeah, the KGP also use a DTA ECU, and they come with a custom made loom and a coil-on plug conversion, a stainless steel exhaust manifold to suit a 70mm exhaust system, and as I've already mentioned, this engine in 2.5 litre version produces up to 360 bhp and 252 foot-pounds of torque. So, you know, a ton of power for a 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine, and again, pretty much the same as what a Millington can produce. The actual power figures stated by Millington for their engines for the 2.5 is between 324 and 364 bhp, depending on rolling road and installation. And in terms of torque, it's between 248 and 262 foot-pounds, again, depending on rolling road and installation. So yeah, this KGP modified, naturally aspirated Cosy lump is roughly the same as what a Millington can produce. So it is, you know, a definite bona fide alternative. And since I've been looking into these KGP motors, you know, doing searches online and stuff, it seems like some people are opting for the KGP lump over the Millington. In fact, I did find a comment somewhere, and I wish I took a screenshot of it, where they said that some people are actually going from the Millington to a KGP NA Cosy for whatever reason, I don't know. Now, this could just be down to cost, right? People might be choosing the KGP over the Millington. Maybe they're a bit cheaper. I don't know. I can't find any prices for the KGP engines. They're just sort of POA. But like with most very, very expensive things, if you need to know the price, then maybe you can't afford one. But I certainly know that the Millington lumps are sort of 30k plus by the time you've bought everything. So maybe the KGP ones are a bit cheaper. Maybe the KGP ones don't need rebuilding after every 1,000 miles. I don't know. Again, this is all just speculation. But on the KGP Facebook page, I can definitely see lots of examples of guys running their engines that are having success in rallying and stuff. So they're definitely doing something right. And again, with 360 horsepower from a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine, yeah, it's seriously impressive stuff. Now, I must stress again that I am not an expert when it comes to engines. I'm not an expert when it comes to anything. I'm just an enthusiast that's interested in some of this stuff that I find online, and I feel that it might be interesting enough to share with you guys. Do let me know in the comments or get in touch via email if you've got any more information about these KGP Motorsport engines, or any other engines that you think could be a bona fide alternative to the Millington lumps, which just seem to be everyone's favourite engine, you know, cost aside. But also, let me know in the comments what your favourite engine would be, your choice of engine if money was no object. You know, what car do you own at the moment, or car would you dream to own if money was no object, and what engine would you put in it? I'll be interested to know what you guys think about that. But other than that, as always, if there's anything else you think would make an interesting video with regards to news in the classic Ford world or beyond, then get in touch, because I'm really enjoying making these MH news videos, and it gives me something to do whilst the weather is too poor for me to get out and film videos about my own cars. But as I think I mentioned in the last video, I am currently halfway through filming a video on my latest project, which will be out at some point in the near future. Tomorrow, though, I am planning to make a video to follow up from the video I made about these brand new Mk2 Escorts that are going to be coming out very soon, which are being built by Borum Motorworks, but licensed by Ford themselves. Today is the 11th of December, and apparently on the 12th of December, tomorrow morning, we're going to be finding out more details about those new Mk1s. So I'm looking forward to getting up early and getting as much information as I can about those new cars, and hopefully some pictures and stuff. And I'm going to be throwing a video together to share anything that I do find out for any of you guys that are interested. But for now, that's all I've got for this video. Huge thanks, as always, to everyone who's tuned in. Do give the video a thumbs up and a share if you thought it was any good. If not, then feel free to give it a thumbs down. Check the links in the description to follow me on Facebook, TikTok and Instagram. My email address will be down there as usual for anyone who wants to contact me. Do check out my own website if you want to grab some official MH merchandise to support and represent the channel. There is still time to get bits in time for Christmas as well, if you're doing any Christmas shopping for any friends or family members that like to follow what I'm up to. Also, check out the Petrolhead Style website. That's my other company that supplies car-themed clothing and other cool products to petrolheads all around the world. Other than that, got to send a huge thanks, as always, to my patrons for your ongoing support. But until next time, thanks for watching.